The blue crystal on Commander Vexil's forehead pulsed with a soft light as he studied the readings on his control screen. His ship Stellar Wind had been traveling through the outer rim of the galaxy for 3 months now, mapping new star systems and searching for signs of intelligent life. The Zephyrians had been exploring space for over 1,000 years, but they still found surprises in the dark corners of the universe. "Commander, we are detecting unusual energy patterns from the third planet in this system," reported Navigator. Kalanara, her own crystal glowing brighter as she concentrated on the data flowing across her workstation. "The readings do not match any known natural phenomena in our databases." Vexil turned his tall, slender frame toward her station. Like all Zephyrians, his skin had a pale blue tint that seemed to shimmer in the ship's artificial light. Hisses. People had evolved on a world of crystal caves and underground seas, and their bodies reflected that heritage with their translucent skin and the small crystals that grew naturally on their foreheads and arms. "Show me the planet," he commanded, and the main viewing screen shifted to display a small world orbiting a yellow star. The planet looked unremarkable at first glance: brown and green continents, blue oceans, white clouds swirling in the atmosphere. But as Vexil studied it more closely, he could see that something was different about this world. "The energy signatures are coming from the northern continent," Kylanara continued. "But according to our long-range surveys, this planet was classified as uninhabited. The galactic database shows no record of any civilization ever developing here." Vexil frowned, the crystal on his forehead dimming slightly. The Zephyrians prided themselves on their thorough record-keeping. They had been mapping the galaxy longer than most species had existed, and their surveys were usually accurate down to the smallest detail. For them to have missed an entire civilization was almost unthinkable. "Take us closer," he ordered, "but maintain a safe distance. If there is intelligent life on this world, we need to approach according to first contact protocols." The Stellar Wind moved silently through space, its engines creating barely a whisper as it approached the mysterious planet. As they drew nearer, the energy readings became stronger and more complex. But they were unlike anything in the Zephyrian databases, not the clean, geometric patterns of advanced technology, but something more organic, more alive. "Commander," called out Science Officer Morden from his station near the back of the bridge, "I am detecting artificial structures on the planet's surface. They appear to be concentrated in one area, forming what looks like a settlement." The main screen zoomed in on the northern continent, and Vexil felt his breath catch in his throat. There, nestled in a valley between rolling hills, was clearly a colony of some kind. He could see buildings arranged in neat rows, vehicles moving along primitive roads, and what appeared to be agricultural fields stretching out in all directions. "The structures are very basic," Morden continued, his voice filled with confusion. "No energy shields, no quantum communicators, no gravitational manipulators. The technology appears to be centuries behind our own standards." Vexil studied the settlement with growing puzzlement. The buildings looked like simple metal and concrete structures, nothing more advanced than what his own people might have built in their early industrial age. The vehicles appeared to run on some form of chemical fuel, leaving small trails of exhaust behind them. Yet the energy readings his ship was detecting suggested something far more sophisticated was happening on this world. "Sir," Navigator Kylanara said suddenly, "we are receiving a transmission from the planet." "Put it through," Vexil ordered, expecting to hear the usual confusion and panic that most species displayed when they first encountered alien visitors. Instead, a calm, friendly voice filled the bridge. "Hello there," the voice said in a language that the ship's translation systems quickly identified as belonging to a species called humans. "This is Jake Morrison, administrator of Haven Colony. We've been expecting visitors eventually. Would you like to come down for coffee?" The bridge fell silent. In all his years of exploration, Vexil had never heard such a casual response to first contact. Most species either fled in terror when they saw a Zephyrian ship or immediately began preparing for battle. Some tried to hide, others sent frantic, diplomatic messages, but none had ever simply invited them down for a beverage. Did he just offer us coffee? Whispered Morden, his crystal flickering with amazement. He did, Kylanara confirmed, checking her translation systems to make sure. They were working properly. The humans appear to be completely calm about our arrival. Vexthel felt a chill run down his spine. In his experience, there were only two types of species that remained calm when faced with superior alien technology: those who were so primitive they didn't understand the danger, and those who were so advanced they didn't fear it. The settlement below looked primitive, but those energy readings suggested something else entirely. Run a full scan of the planet, he ordered. I want to know everything about these humans and their colony. The next few hours brought even more mysteries. The planet itself was hostile to most forms of life. The atmosphere contained toxic compounds that should have been lethal to the human species. The gravity was significantly higher than what humans had evolved to handle, and the radiation levels from the nearby star were far beyond what most organic life could survive. Yet the humans were not just surviving on this world, they were thriving. Their agricultural fields were producing abundant crops. Their settlement showed signs of steady growth, and thermal scans showed that the colonists were all healthy and active. More puzzling still, the humans seemed to move through their environment with an ease that suggested they were perfectly adapted to conditions that should have killed them. Sir, Kylanara said quietly, I am detecting something else. The humans appear to be aware of our presence even when we move to different positions around the planet. They track our movements with an accuracy that suggests they have sensor capabilities we cannot detect. Vexthel turned to study her readings. She was right. Every time the stellar wind changed its orbital position, the humans on the surface seemed to know exactly where they were. It was as if they could sense the ship's presence without using any technology the Zephyrians could identify. Commander, came Jake Morrison's voice again over the radio. We know you're probably running scans and trying to figure out what you're looking at. That's natural enough. But if you really want to understand what's happening here, you'll need to come down and see for yourself. The coffee's getting cold. Vexthel looked around at his crew, seeing his own confusion reflected in their glowing crystals. Every instinct told him to be cautious, to study these humans from a safe distance until he understood what he was dealing with. But his curiosity was stronger than his fear, and something in the human's voice suggested that they meant no harm. Prepare a diplomatic shuttle, he finally said. We're going down to meet these humans. The Zephyrian shuttle descended through the planet's atmosphere like a silver teardrop, its hull glowing softly as it cut through the thick, toxic air. Commander Vexthel sat in the pilot's seat, his hands steady on the controls despite the growing tension in his chest. Behind him, Navigator Kylanara monitored the atmospheric readings while Science Officer Morden checked and rechecked their translation equipment. The air down there should kill us within minutes, Kylanara said, her voice tight with concern. The chemical composition is completely hostile to our biology. We will need to keep our environmental suits sealed at all times. Vexthel nodded, though he was more worried about the humans than the atmosphere. How were they surviving in conditions that required his people to wear protective suits? The thermal scans from orbit had shown the colonists walking around in simple clothing, breathing the poisonous air as if it were harmless. The shuttle touched down in a cleared area just outside the human settlement. Through the viewport, Vexthel could see a small group of humans walking toward them across the open ground. They moved with easy confidence, their faces showing curiosity rather than fear. The commander had never seen anything like it. Remember, he told his crew as they checked their equipment one final time, these humans appear friendly, but we know almost nothing about them. Stay alert and be ready for anything. The shuttle's door opened with a soft hiss, and Vexthel stepped out onto the alien world. The ground beneath his feet felt solid and real, but the air around him shimmered with energy patterns that made his skin tingle. Even through his environmental suit, he could sense something different about this place, something that went beyond the hostile atmosphere and dangerous radiation. The humans approached without weapons, their hands held open, in what appeared to be a gesture of welcome. The leader was a tall man with graying hair and kind eyes, wearing simple work clothes that looked worn but clean. He smiled as he drew near, and Vexthal felt some of his tension ease despite himself. "Commander Vexthal, I presume," the man sighed, his voice clear and friendly. "I'm Jake Morrison, administrator of Haven Colony. Welcome to our little corner of the galaxy." "Thank you," Vexthal replied, his translator converting his words into the human language. "I must admit, your response to our arrival has been rather unexpected. Most species react with alarm when they first encounter alien visitors." Jake chuckled, a sound that seemed to carry genuine amusement. "Oh, we were plenty surprised when we first detected your ship, but we've learned to take things as they come. This world has taught us that the universe is full of wonders we never imagined." Behind Jake stood two other humans. One was a woman with short brown hair and intelligent eyes, dressed in what appeared to be a scientist's clothing. The other was a stocky man with calloused hands and alert posture that suggested military training. Jake gestured to them with obvious pride. "This is Dr. Lisa Carter, our chief scientist," he said, indicating the woman. "And this is Ben Rodriguez, head of our security team. Though I suspect you'll find we have a rather different approach to security than most colonies." Dr. Carter stepped forward, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Commander, I hope you don't mind if I ask about your species. We've theorized about what other intelligent life might look like, but seeing you in person is absolutely fascinating." Vexthal found himself oddly charmed by her directness. "Not at all. I confess I am equally curious about your people. Your colony appears to be thriving in conditions that should be lethal to most organic life." "That's quite a story," Jake said, with a smile. "But perhaps we should show you around first. Actions speak louder than words, as we like to say." As they walked toward the settlement, Vexthal noticed details that made his confusion grow deeper. The humans moved across the rough terrain with perfect balance, never stumbling or struggling with the increased gravity. They seemed to know exactly where they were going, even when the path was unclear, and they appeared completely unaffected by the toxic atmosphere. "How long have you been on this world?" Kilanara asked, her scientific curiosity overcoming her caution. 15 years, Dr. Carter replied. "We came here as refugees from Earth. Our homeworld was dying, and we needed to find somewhere new to build our lives." "But why choose such a hostile planet?" Morden asked. "Surely there were more suitable worlds available." Jake's expression grew thoughtful. "We didn't really choose this world so much as it chose us. When we first arrived, we were desperate and running low on supplies. We expected to struggle just to survive. But something amazing happened instead. They entered the settlement proper, and Vexthal was struck by how well organized everything appeared. The buildings were simple but well maintained. The streets were clean and carefully planned, and everywhere he looked he saw signs of a healthy, growing community. Children played in small parks while adults went about their daily work, and everyone seemed genuinely happy. "Your infrastructure is impressive," Vexthal observed. "The layout suggests careful planning and efficient resource management." "We've had some help with that," Ben Rodriguez said with a grin. "This world has a way of showing you the best places to build, the best places to plant, the best places to dig for water." "Help from whom?" Kalanara asked, her crystals glowing brighter with interest. The three humans exchanged glances, and Jake's smile grew wider. "That's the amazing part. We learned to listen to what this world was telling us." Vexthal felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean by that?" Dr. Carter gestured to the ground beneath their feet. "This planet is more than just rock and soil, Commander. It's alive in ways we never imagined possible. And it's been very patient with us as we learn to understand its language." "You're saying the planet itself is intelligent?" Morden asked, his voice filled with skepticism. "Not intelligent in the way we understand it," Jake replied. "But aware, certainly. Conscious in a way that goes beyond anything we thought possible." They paused beside a small garden where several human children were playing. Vexthal watched in amazement as one of the children, a girl who couldn't have been more than 8 years old, placed her hand on a withered plant and seemed to concentrate. Within moments, the plant began to straighten and its leaves grew greener. "How is she doing that?" Kalanara whispered. "She's asking the plant what it needs," Dr. Carter explained calmly. "And then she's helping it find what it's looking for. All the children here can do things like that. It's perfectly natural once you learn to listen." Vexthel stared at the child, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. "But that's impossible. Plants don't have consciousness. They can't communicate." "That's what we thought too," Jake said. "But we've learned that consciousness comes in many forms. Some of them are very different from what we expected." As they continued through the settlement, Vexthel saw more impossible things. Adults who seemed to know exactly when rain was coming, even when the sky was clear. Workers who could find underground water sources by simply walking across the landscape. Guards who appeared to sense danger from directions they weren't even looking. "Commander," Ben Rodriguez said quietly, "I know this all seems strange to you. It seemed strange to us too at first. But this world has been good to us, and we've tried to be good to it in return." "How?" Vexthel asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. "By learning to live as partners instead of conquerors," Dr. Carter replied. "By respecting this world's needs and accepting its gifts. By becoming part of something larger than ourselves." The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that seemed more vivid than any sunset Vexthel had ever seen. The humans around them began to gather in small groups, their faces turning toward the darkening sky with expressions of peaceful contentment. "You're welcome to stay as long as you like," Jake said. "We have plenty of room, and I think you'll find that this world has more to teach than you might expect." Vexthel looked around at the impossible colony, at the humans who thrived in conditions that should have killed them, at the children who could heal plants with a touch. Everything he thought he knew about life and consciousness was being challenged by what he saw here. "I think," he said slowly, "that we have a great deal to learn from each other." Commander Vexthel had been on the planet for 3 days now, and each day brought new mysteries that challenged everything he thought he knew about life in the universe. He sat in the small guest quarters the humans had prepared for him and his crew, reviewing the data they had collected. The readings made no sense according to Zephyrian science, yet the evidence was right in front of his eyes. "Sir," Navigator Kylanara said as she entered the room, her crystals pulsing with excitement, "I have been monitoring the energy patterns around the colony for the past 72 hours. The readings are unlike anything in our databases." Vexthel looked up from his datapad. "What kind of patterns?" "They appear to be biological in nature, but they extend far beyond the human settlement. The entire planet seems to be generating some form of organized energy field." She paused, her expression troubled. "Commander, I believe the humans were telling the truth. This world is alive." Before Vexthel could respond, a soft knock came at the door. Jake Morrison entered with his usual warm smile, carrying a steaming cup of the beverage the humans called coffee. "Good morning, Commander," Jake said. "I brought you some coffee and wondered if you might like to take a walk with me today. There are some things I think you need to see." Vexthel accepted the cup gratefully. He had grown fond of the bitter human drink over the past few days. "What kind of things?" "The kind that are easier to experience than explain," Jake replied. "Dr. Carter and I have been talking, and we think it's time to show you how we really live here." They walked through the settlement in the early morning light, past the simple buildings and well-tended gardens. Children were already playing in the streets, their laughter carrying on the warm air. But Vexthel noticed something different about the way they moved. They seemed to know things they shouldn't know, sense things they shouldn't be able to sense. "Jake," he said carefully, "yesterday I saw a child predict exactly when and where it would rain, 3 hours before the first cloud appeared." "How is that possible?" Jake smiled. "Amy Foster has always been good at reading the weather. Her father Steve is even better at finding water. Would you like to meet them?" They walked to a small house near the edge of the settlement where a man was working in his garden. He was tall and lean with weathered hands, and he looked up with friendly eyes as they approached. A young girl, perhaps 12 years old, sat nearby reading a book. "Steve, Amy," Jake called out. "I'd like you to meet Commander Vexthel from the Zephyrian exploration ship." Steve Foster wiped his hands on his pants and walked over to shake hands with the alien commander. "Pleasure to meet you, sir. Amy and I have been curious about your people." "The pleasure is mine," Vexthel replied. "Jake tells me you have unusual abilities when it comes to understanding your environment." Amy looked up from her book, her young face serious. "It's not really abilities, sir. It's more like listening. The world talks to us if we pay attention." "Could you show me what you mean?" Vexthel asked. Amy nodded and stood up, walking to an open area of ground. She knelt down and placed both hands flat on the soil, closing her eyes in concentration. For a moment nothing happened, then her eyes opened and she looked directly at Vexthel. "There's going to be a small earthquake in about 6 hours, she said matter-of-factly. "Nothing dangerous, just a little tremor about 50 kilometers south of here. The planet is adjusting some pressure in the underground rock." Vexthel felt his breath catch. "How can you possibly know that?" "She feels it," Steve Foster said, joining his daughter. "Amy has always been sensitive to the planet's moods. When she was little, she used to cry before storms came, even when the sky was clear." "But how is that scientifically possible?" Kailanara asked, her crystals flickering with confusion. Steve knelt down beside his daughter and placed his own hands on the ground. "Commander, your people have crystals that grow from your bodies, right? Crystals that help you sense energy and communicate with each other?" "Yes," Vexthel replied slowly. "But that's different. That's a natural part of our biology." "This is a natural part of ours too now," Steve said. "When we first came to this world, we were just regular humans, but over time, living here changed us. The planet taught us to listen, and we learned to hear." Amy stood up and brushed the dirt from her hands. "Would you like me to show you something else?" Without waiting for an answer, she walked over to a section of ground that looked completely ordinary. "There's an underground spring about 3 meters down, right here. The water is clean and cold, and it connects to the main aquifer, about half a kilometer to the east." Steve nodded proudly. "Amy can sense water sources anywhere on the planet. I can do it too, but she's better at it than I am." "This is impossible," Morden said, his voice filled with disbelief. "Humans don't have biological sensors capable of detecting underground water or predicting seismic activity." "We didn't," Jake said quietly, "but we do now." Dr. Lisa Carter appeared from behind one of the nearby buildings, carrying a small device that looked like a combination of human and alien technology. "Commander, I've been hoping to show you some of our research. We've been documenting the changes in our people since we arrived here." She led them to a small laboratory building where the walls were covered with charts and graphs. Vexthel studied the data with growing amazement. The humans' brain patterns had changed dramatically over the years, showing new neural pathways that didn't exist in baseline human biology. "What we discovered," Dr. Carter explained, "is that this planet has a form of consciousness that spans the entire world. It's not like animal consciousness or even plant consciousness. It's something entirely different, something that thinks on geological timescales and senses things across vast distances. And it's been alone for millions of years," Jake added. "When we arrived, we were the first species to approach it with curiosity instead of fear, friendship instead of conquest." Amy Foster had followed them into the laboratory, and now she spoke up with the wisdom of someone far older than her years. The planet was lonely. It had been watching the stars for so long, wanting to share what it knew. "When we came here, we were scared and hurt from losing our old world. We needed each other." "So you formed a partnership," Vexthel said, beginning. "To understand. More than that," Dr. Carter replied. "We formed a symbiotic relationship. The planet shares its knowledge with us, its ability to sense geological changes, weather patterns, underground resources. In return, we share our human perspective, our creativity, our emotions, our ability to imagine new possibilities." Steve Foster nodded. "It's not magic, Commander, it's biology. The planet produces certain chemical compounds that interact with human brain chemistry. Over time, exposure to these compounds creates new neural pathways. We become more sensitive to the planet's signals, and it becomes more aware of our thoughts and feelings. But the process takes years, Jake said. And it only works if both sides are willing. The planet has to accept you, and you have to accept it. Vexthel felt a chill run down his spine. What exactly are you saying? I'm saying that we're not just colonists living on this world, Jake replied. We're part of it now. And it's part of us. As if to demonstrate his point, Jake walked over to a window and looked out at the sky. Clouds were beginning to gather on the horizon, though the morning had been clear. There's a storm coming, he said. It'll be here in about 2 hours. But it's not a dangerous storm. The planet is just watering the crops. Amy giggled. Sometimes I think the planet has a sense of humor. It likes to surprise the new people. Dr. Carter showed them more data, more evidence of the incredible partnership between human and planet. Brain scans that showed impossible neural activity, chemical analyses that revealed unknown compounds in the colonists' blood, atmospheric readings that proved the planet was actively managing its own weather systems. The planet learns from us too, she explained. It's become more creative, more spontaneous. Before we arrived, it was very predictable, very routine. Now it experiments with new weather patterns, new ways of managing its ecosystems. And it protects us, Ben Rodriguez said as he joined them in the laboratory. When dangerous storms come from space, the planet deflects them. When asteroid impacts threaten the colony, it shifts its magnetic field to redirect them. We're not just living on this world, we're living with it. Vexthel looked around at the humans, at their calm faces and confident smiles. And this is why you weren't afraid when we arrived. You knew the planet would protect you. We knew it would protect all of us, Jake corrected. Including you, the planet doesn't see you as a threat, Commander. It sees you as potential friends. Outside, the first drops of rain began to fall, just as Jake had predicted. But it wasn't ordinary rain. Each drop seemed to sparkle with its own inner light, and the air filled with a sweet fragrance that made Vexthel feel peaceful and content. Welcome to our world, Commander, Amy Foster said with a smile. The planet has been waiting to meet you. The peaceful morning at Haven Colony was shattered by the appearance of 12 massive ships in the planet's sky. Commander Vexthel stood outside the settlement's main building, watching through his binoculars as the Zephyrian battle fleet took position in orbit above them. His stomach felt heavy with dread because he knew what this meant. Sir, Navigator Kailanara said as she ran up to him, her crystals flashing with alarm. I'm receiving communications from Fleet Admiral Zarkith. He's demanding immediate surrender of the human colony and access to their technology. Jake Morrison appeared beside them, his face calm despite the obvious threat hanging over his people. I take it your leaders weren't as understanding as you were, Commander. Vexthel felt shame burning in his chest. I sent detailed reports about what we discovered here. I tried to explain that your partnership with the planet isn't something that can be taken or copied, but the High Command sees only power that could be used by the Zephyrian Empire. Power, Jake repeated quietly, looking up at the ships that blocked out portions of the sky. They still don't understand, do they? Dr. Lisa Carter joined them, carrying a small communication device. Admiral Zarkith is broadcasting on all frequencies. He's giving us 1 hour to surrender and provide full access to what he calls our planetary control technology, or he'll destroy the colony. Can he do that? Asked Amy Foster, who had been playing nearby with several other children. Her young voice carried no fear, only curiosity. His ships carry enough firepower to level this entire continent, Vexthel admitted. But Amy, you and your people need to understand something. Admiral Zarkith isn't like me. He doesn't believe in negotiation or partnership. He takes what he wants. Jake knelt down to Amy's level. What do you think the planet wants us to do? Placed her hand on the ground and closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, she smiled. It's not worried. It says the big ships can't hurt what they don't understand. Ben Rodriguez approached the group, his expression serious. Jake, I've got all our security teams ready. But we both know we can't fight a space fleet with hunting rifles and farming tools. We won't be fighting alone, Jake replied. He looked around at the growing crowd of colonists who were gathering in the settlement's central plaza. Everyone, please join hands and connect with our world. It's time to show our visitors what real partnership looks like. The humans began to form a large circle in the plaza, adults and children alike holding hands and placing their free hands on the ground. Vexthel watched in amazement as their faces grew peaceful and their breathing synchronized. Even the youngest children seemed to understand exactly what they were doing. What are they attempting? Kylanara whispered. They're asking the planet for help, Dr. Carter explained. Not demanding it, not commanding it, but asking as friends ask friends. High above them, Admiral Zarketh's voice boomed from speakers on his flagship. Humans of the surface colony, you have 30 minutes to comply with our demands. Surrender your planetary control devices and submit to Zephyrian authority. This is your final warning. Jake Morrison stood up from the circle and activated his communication device. Admiral Zarketh, this is Colony Administrator Jake Morrison. I'm afraid we can't give you what you're asking for because it doesn't exist. Our connection to this world isn't a technology that can be transferred or copied. Lies, came the angry response. Our sensors detect massive energy manipulation across your entire planet. You will surrender the devices responsible for this power or face the consequences. Admiral, Jake said patiently, you're welcome to send down representatives to see for themselves. We have nothing to hide. But what you're detecting isn't coming from devices. You have 20 minutes to comply. The humans in the circle had grown very still, their faces filled with concentration. Vexthel could feel something changing in the air around them, a subtle shift in the planet's energy that made his crystals tingle. The ground beneath his feet seemed to hum with a low frequency that was just below the range of hearing. Commander, Morden said urgently, I'm detecting massive geological activity across the planet. Seismic readings are off the charts, but there's no actual ground movement. Amy Foster opened her eyes and looked up at the alien ships above them. The planet wants to know if the visitors are friends or enemies. It can feel their anger and their weapons. Tell it they're confused, Jake said gently. They think the only way to be strong is to take things from others. Sir, came a panicked voice from Admiral Zarketh's ship, our navigation systems are malfunctioning. We're reading impossible magnetic field fluctuations across the entire planet. Vexthel watched as the ships above began to drift slightly out of formation. Their engines were still working, but something was interfering with their ability to maintain precise positions. The planet is affecting their guidance systems. Not attacking them, Dr. Carter clarified. Just making it difficult for them to target anything accurately. Admiral Zarketh, Jake's voice came over the communication system again. Your ships are in no danger, but you might want to consider landing. The planet is trying to protect both of us. I will not be dictated to by a primitive colony, the Admiral snarled. All ships prepare to fire on the settlement. Full bombardment pattern. The children in the circle began to sing softly, a wordless melody that seemed to resonate with the planet itself. As their voices rose, the ground around the colony began to glow with a faint, pulsing light. The air itself seemed to shimmer as if reality was bending around them. Sir, came another voice from the fleet, our weapon systems are offline. All targeting computers are showing random data. What do you mean offline? The energy weapons won't charge, sir. The projectile systems won't lock onto targets. It's as if the planet is scrambling every electronic system we have. Vexthel looked up at the ships and saw that their running lights were flickering erratically. Some of the vessels were slowly rotating as their stabilization systems struggled to function. But none of them were crashing or falling from the sky. The planet is being very careful, Amy said, her voice filled with wonder. It doesn't want to hurt anyone. It's just making sure the angry visitors can't hurt us. Carol Jenkins, a geologist who had been part of the colony since its early days, approached the group with excitement in her eyes. "Commander, you need to understand what's happening here. The planet is demonstrating its power while simultaneously protecting your fleet. It could crash every ship in minutes if it wanted to, but instead it's just neutralizing their weapons." "This is impossible," Admiral Zarketh's voice came over the radio, filled with frustration and growing fear. "Our ships are the most advanced technology in the galaxy." "Admiral," Jake replied, "your technology is impressive, but it's still just technology. You're dealing with something that thinks on a completely different level." The humans in the circle continued their quiet communion with the planet, and gradually the chaotic energy readings began to stabilize. The ships above stopped drifting, and their systems came back online, but their weapons remained inoperative. "Sir," reported one of Zarketh's officers, "all ship functions are returning to normal except for combat systems. The planet appears to be allowing us to maintain life support and navigation, but nothing else." Steve Foster stood up from the circle and looked directly at Vexthal. "Commander, the planet wants to communicate with your admiral. Not through words, but through direct contact. It wants him to understand what we learned here." "Admiral Zarketh will never agree to that," Vexthal said. "He sees any form of surrender as weakness." "Then maybe," Jake said thoughtfully, "it's time for him to learn a different definition of strength." Above them, the Zephyrian fleet hung motionless in the sky, their weapons useless and their pride wounded. But they were alive and unharmed, protected by the same planetary consciousness. They had come to conquer. "Admiral," Jake's voice carried across the communication channels, "the planet is offering you a choice. You can continue to see this as a battle to be won, or you can see it as an opportunity to learn something new about the universe. The decision is yours." The radio fell silent as Admiral Zarketh considered his options, while below him the humans of Haven Colony waited patiently for his answer. The silence stretched across the communication channels for what felt like hours, though Commander Vexthal knew it had only been minutes. High above Haven Colony, the Zephyrian battle fleet hung motionless in the sky, their weapons still disabled by forces they could not understand or control. Admiral Zarketh was faced with a choice that challenged everything he believed about power and conquest. Finally, the Admiral's voice crackled over the radio, filled with reluctant curiosity. "Colony Administrator Morrison, explain to me exactly what you are proposing?" Jake Morrison stood in the center of the human circle, his hand resting gently on young A. Foster's shoulder. "Admiral, we're offering you the chance to experience what we experienced when we first arrived on this world. Direct communication with the planetary consciousness." "That sounds like surrender with extra steps," Zarketh replied coldly. "It's not surrender at all," Dr. Lisa Carter interjected, stepping forward to speak into the communication device. "It's an invitation to understand something completely new, something that could change how your entire civilization thinks about intelligence and cooperation." Vexthal watched the faces of the human colonists around him. They showed no fear, no anger toward the ships that had threatened to destroy their home. Instead, their expressions were filled with patience and genuine concern for the aliens who had come to conquer them. "Admiral," Vexthal said, activating his own communicator, "I have spent days with these humans. What they are offering is real. This planet is unlike anything in our databases, and the partnership these people have formed with it could benefit all the species in the galaxy. You've been compromised by prolonged exposure to whatever technology they're using," Zarketh snapped. "Return to your ship immediately." "Sir, with respect, there is no technology. The humans are telling the truth." Amy Foster tugged on Jake's sleeve and whispered something in his ear. Jake nodded and knelt down to her level, listening carefully to what she had to say. When she finished, his eyes widened with surprise. "Admiral," Jake said, standing up and looking toward the sky, "the planet wants to show you something. It's going to demonstrate its power, but not in the way you might expect." "I've seen enough demonstrations," Zarketh replied. "My fleet is defenseless. What more do you want?" "Look beyond your ships," Amy called out, her young voice carrying clearly through the communication system. Look at the space around your fleet. In orbit above the planet, something extraordinary began to happen. The empty space around the Zephyrian ships began to shimmer and glow with soft colors that had no name. Points of light appeared and danced in complex patterns, creating a display of beauty that took the breath away from everyone who saw it. "Sir," came a voice from one of the fleet's officers, "long-range sensors are detecting massive energy patterns extending beyond our solar system. It's as if the planet is communicating with something vast and distant." The light show continued, growing more complex and beautiful with each passing moment. But it wasn't just pretty colors, it was information, data being transmitted across impossible distances at speeds that defied the laws of physics as the Zephyrians understood them. "What are we looking at?" Admiral Zarkov asked quietly, his voice filled with wonder despite himself. "The planet is talking to its friends," Amy explained. "There are other worlds like this one, scattered across the galaxy. They've been waiting for someone to help them connect with each other." Dr. Carter activated her scanning equipment and stared at the readings in amazement. "Admiral, the planet is creating some kind of quantum communication network. It's linking with other planetary consciousnesses across vast distances, sharing information instantaneously." Steve Foster placed his hand on the ground and listened for a moment before speaking. "The planet says there are 47 other worlds like this one in our galaxy alone. They've all been isolated, waiting for a species that could help them reach out to each other. And humans are that species?" Vexthal asked. "Apparently so," Jake replied. "Our ability to form emotional connections, to empathize and communicate, makes us natural bridges between different forms of consciousness." The light display above them reached a crescendo, and suddenly the radio filled with voices, not human voices or Zephyrian voices, but something else entirely. It was the sound of planets singing to each other across the void, sharing their experiences and their knowledge after millions of years of solitude. "My God," whispered one of the fleet officers, "it's beautiful." Admiral Zarkov's ship began to descend toward the planet's surface, its weapons still disabled but its landing systems functioning perfectly. The planetary consciousness was still protecting everyone, even as it revealed wonders beyond imagination. "Admiral," Jake said, as the massive ship touched down near the colony, "the planet invites you and your crew to join us. Not as conquerors or prisoners, but as guests and potential friends." The ship's landing ramp lowered, and Admiral Zarkov emerged with a small group of officers. He was taller than Vexthal, with more elaborate crystals growing from his forehead and arms, marking his high rank. His expression was guarded but curious as he approached the human settlement. "I have commanded fleets across this galaxy for over 200 years, he said, his voice carrying authority even in defeat. "I have seen wonders that would drive lesser minds to madness. But I have never seen anything like what just happened above us. Would you like to experience it directly?" Amy Foster asked, stepping forward with the fearless confidence that only children possess. "The planet really wants to meet you." Admiral Zarkov looked down at the small human child, then at the faces of the colonists gathered around them. "What exactly would this involve?" "Just sit down with us," Jake explained. "Place your hands on the ground and open your mind to new possibilities. The planet will do the rest." The Admiral hesitated for a moment, then slowly knelt down and placed his hands on the alien soil. The other Zephyrians followed his example, forming a larger circle with the humans. Amy Foster sat between Admiral Zarkov and Commander Vexthal, her small hands bridging the gap between different species. What happened next was beyond words. The planetary consciousness reached out to touch the minds of the Zephyrians, sharing its vast perspective and ancient wisdom. They felt the weight of geological ages, the slow dance of continents, the patient cultivation of life across countless millennia. But they also felt something new, the joy of connection, the excitement of shared discovery, the warmth of friendship across impossible differences. Admiral Zarkov gasped as the experience flooded through him. He saw the universe through the planet's senses, felt the loneliness of countless worlds waiting to be understood. experienced the incredible moment when the first humans had reached out with open hearts instead of grasping hands. "It's not about power," he said in amazement. "It's about relationship. Now you understand," Dr. Carter said gently. "The planet doesn't want to be conquered or controlled. It wants to be part of something larger, something that includes all the different forms of consciousness in the universe." When the communion ended, Admiral Zarkith sat in silence for a long time, his crystals glowing with new patterns that Vexthal had never seen before. Finally, he looked up at Jake Morrison with respect in his ancient eyes. "Administrator Morrison, I formally request permission to establish a Zephyrian research station in orbit around your world. Not to study you, but to learn from you." Permission granted," Jake replied with a smile. "But you might find that other species will be coming soon. Word tends to spread when something this significant happens." Over the following months, Haven Colony became the most important place in the galaxy. Representatives from dozens of different species arrived to witness the partnership between humans and the planetary consciousness. Some came as conquerors, others as skeptics, but all left as friends. The humans helped facilitate connections between the visiting species and other living worlds throughout the galaxy. Each planet had its own personality, its own gifts to offer, and its own way of forming partnerships with organic life. Some preferred scientists, others responded to artists or philosophers. But in every case, the key was the same: approaching with respect and genuine curiosity rather than the desire to dominate. Amy Foster, now a teenager, had become something of a galactic ambassador, helping nervous aliens make their first contact with planetary consciousness. Steve Foster led expeditions to other worlds, teaching new colonies how to listen to their adopted homes. Dr. Carter published papers that revolutionized the understanding of consciousness and intelligence. Throughout known space, and Jake Morrison, the simple colony administrator who had offered coffee to alien visitors, found himself at the center of a new age of cooperation and understanding that spanned the galaxy. Years later, as he sat in his garden watching ships from 100 different worlds come and go in the sky above Haven Colony, Jake reflected on how much had changed. Humanity had not conquered the stars through superior technology or military might. Instead, they had found their place in the universe by doing what humans had always done best: making friends. The planet beneath his feet hummed with contentment, its voice now part of a vast chorus of living worlds singing together across the cosmos.